Okay, so people are always asking me about how to cook stuff, and how to make things that are healthy and paleo and blah, blah, blah. But there's really nothing to it. If it was hard, I couldn't do it. So I just wanted to take a little video. I would love to have you all over to my house instead, but my house is too dirty, so I can't do that. Or I would come to your house, but no one has invited me. So since none of those options would work, I wanted to make a little video about one of my favorite things that I make that is indeed paleo. So what I'm making here is just a frittata, and a frittata is basically an omelet without the crust. So all the good stuff, all the eggs and the filling and that, and none of the crusty stuff that you can't have when you're doing paleo or doing a whole party challenge. So a frittata is infinitely variable. You can make them with whatever you got laying around the house. Whatever meat or vegetables that you want to include in them, say okay, it'll probably work out fine. What we're doing today starts out with bacon, as most good things do. Starts out with bacon. So what I've got in here is a pan, about 6 or 7 pieces of bacon that I chopped up. I put it on medium-high heat. I'm just cooking it till it gets crispy and rendering it down just like you would if you were just cooking regular old bacon for breakfast. So while that's cooking, I'll talk a little bit about what I'm going to put in this particular frittata. I have a red pepper here, red bell pepper, I'm chopping up. Really, you can use any type of, whoa, easy now. Gotta be careful of that bacon, it's a bit tricky. You can use basically whatever type of vegetables that you want. But it's important that we cook them first because vegetables have a lot of water in them. So if we were to just put these raw vegetables into our egg mixture when we're making a frittata, then we get all watery and yucky. So I'm chopping up my red bell pepper. And the other vegetables I'm going to use are just vegetables that I had left over. From a night or two ago we had pho Vietnamese beef noodle soup. And so I have some of the leftover vegetables from that. Normally I'd be chopping up an onion, but I have green onions left over from the pho. So I'm going to use those in there instead of chopping up whole new onion. So my bacon is almost done. I'm going to grab a plate, put this bacon on. I'm going to leave all that delicious bacon fat in the pan. Hang on one. So I'm back. I'm getting my bacon. I'm going to put it on this pan to drain. The next step will be cooking the vegetables in this bacon fat. Something I neglected to mention was I turned my oven on to 350. So go ahead and preheat your oven while you're doing the rest of this stuff. It'll just save you time and your frittata is actually cooking. We're not going to cook the frittata on top of the stove. We're going to cook the frittata in the oven because the oven gives a much more even overall heat instead of being on top of the stove where all the heat's coming from the bottom. So if you've ever cooked eggs and they've gotten too done on the bottom from being on top of the stove, this is going to keep that from happening. It's just going to be a much more even cooking process in the oven at 350. Okay, so I got my bacon out. Now I'm going to put these vegetables in and saute them, like I said, to cook out some of the water and get them nice and cooked before we actually add eggs to the equation. So I got my red bell pepper. This is going to splatter, so be careful. All that water in the vegetables will cause it to pop because, as we know, water and fat does not mix too well. So I got my red peppers in there. I lost my spoon. Got my spoon. I'm going to put those other vegetables like I was talking about. I have some cilantro, some green onions, these little cute little mushrooms. They're called enoki mushrooms. They're freaking adorable. And I'm going to put I have carrots too, which is a little weird, but that's what I have, so I'm going to put them in too.
How about onions? Would you normally use onions?
Well, as I said earlier in the video, since I have green onions, I'm not going to chop up an onion because I only have one onion over here in the old vegetable basket, so I don't want to use my only onion, and I already have these little green onions, so that'll give the same sort of flavor and save me an onion for whatever I decide to put later on. So while that's kind of cooking down, you're going to need to leave it probably for about 5 or 10 minutes, I'd say, at medium until those vegetables get soft. But I have a little surprise for this particular frittata. 2 surprises actually. These are habanero peppers, and they are really, really hot. So use them with caution. But I do like to put some chilies into my frittatas. I generally do not use habanero though because they're pretty potent. But we're going to be very, very brave and do so. So I'm probably only going to chop up like this much for the entire frittata, and that's probably going to be a completely sufficient amount of habanero pepper. If I was using a serrano or a jalapeno, I might use 1 or 2 chilies. For a frittata this size, this frittata is probably going to have about 8 servings, or feed me about twice. I eat a lot of eggs. So I got my habanero chopped up. I'm going to put that in the pan with those other vegetables and let them be cooking down. Now I'm going to go and immediately wash my hands, because if you've ever touched your eyes after messing with this kind of chili, you know it can be extremely painful. In fact, some people will tell you that you should use rubber gloves when you're working with them at all. It's not a bad idea. I don't typically do it because I don't have rubber gloves, and because that's what skin's for. So anyway, my vegetables are getting cooked down nice. Yeah, I think I'm going to get some garlic too and put in here just because I like garlic. Garlic's really good for you, and garlic's paleo. I can find the garlic. And here, got the beer bottle out. Okay, so no rhyme or reason really to how much garlic I'm putting in here. I just happen to like garlic. You can use real garlic chopped up. I don't like to chop up garlic. I use a ton of it. And if I had to chop every clove of garlic that I use, then I would smell like garlic all the time. Maybe more so than I do now, even. So I like to buy the kind that's already chopped up. It just kind of saves me time and keeps my hands from smelling so garlicky. So I said there were 2 little surprises, if you will, to this frittata. The second one is going to be, I have about a pound of shrimp that I have left over because we made gumbo earlier in the week. So I'm going to put them into it. Shellfish and eggs are really good together. I know a lot of people don't really think about doing it, but crab omelets or shrimp omelets, things like that, it's really a really great idea. Now the reason why I put them in at the end is because shrimp are very prone to overcooking. You got to be mindful that we're not going to be done cooking when these things get sort of opaque on here. We're going to put this whole kit and caboodle into the oven to cook our eggs. So your shrimp are going to be cooked by the time you get done with the eggs. So at any rate, those are in there. And for the eggs, I've got whole eggs, got a pot. But I'm not only going to use whole eggs, I'm also going to use egg whites. That's just kind of my practice. I like to do that because it adds in a good bit more protein without adding any of the fat. I don't have a real problem with that. I don't think that's a bad idea generally, but because I do eat so many eggs, I like to cut my eggs with egg whites. So I'm putting about a half a carton of these egg whites to 3 eggs. I actually like to do this more than I like to cook with just egg whites, because just egg whites gets kind of funny and foamy if you just cook with them, but having the blend gives them enough fat that they still cook really beautifully. So I'm going to get salt and pepper, get a fork, mix these up. I like to season my, my producer's telling me something. Oh, there was already salt there?
No, you have tea.
Oh, I have 2 salts. Well, I like salt. I like pepper, and I like to season my eggs before I cook them. And I can kind of do that to my own taste because I know how much salt I like in things, which is generally too much. But you don't have to. You can wait and season it after everything comes out. That might be a more helpful practice in the long run anyway. So I like pepper. I like a lot of pepper, so I'm going to put a good few shapes of pepper in there. This pepper is really coarsely ground. It's odd because supermarket pepper is not usually this coarse, but I like it because it makes it taste a little bit spicier and more peppery. So I've got that in there. I'm just going to whisk that up. You know what the hell, I'm going to put the rest of these egg whites in there because there's only like a little bit left in this carton. And what are you going to do with that much egg white in a carton? I don't even know. So I'm going to go ahead and use it. Okay, so get them all whisked up nice and beautifully. You could use a whisk for this and not a fork to be a little more efficient. I don't see my whisk. It's not over here in my whisker area. Alright, so that's good and mixed up. You can see my vegetables are soft. These shrimp aren't cooked all the way through. You can see they're trying to escape. But that's fine because we're about to put this whole thing into the oven for probably close to 20 minutes to get it done. So, although they are not cooked now, they will be by the time they come out of the oven. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of move everything around so it's generally distributed pretty evenly across the bottom of this pan. And I'm going to pour this bucket of eggs on top. And we're going to put the whole thing in the oven at 350. We're going to let it cook. It's going to get puffed up. It's going to get all brown and beautiful on top. So that'll probably take about 15-20 minutes, but keep a lookout on it. And you'll be able to tell once it gets kind of puffy, kind of brown, that it's all done. Then you just flip it out like a cake or like a pizza. It'll come right out of the pan, hopefully. And we'll show you that. I'll show you at least a picture of that when it gets done. Okay. Thanks, y'all. Holy hell. I forgot to put the bacon back in there. The bacon that we just cooked, the beautiful bacon. That goes in there too, FYI. I don't know what I was thinking, but it did not take me long to realize I want my bacon back. So no big deal. Everything is mendable. I'm just taking the bacon. Everything's still wet on top. It's still loose. It wasn't in there. It really wasn't in there for like 5 seconds before I realized. So in an ideal world, I would throw the bacon back in there before I pour the eggs on top. You know what? It's not going to make one bit of difference. It's going to taste just as good. And, you know, if I wasn't honest enough to tell you, you would never know. But anyway, bacon's back. Everything's going back in the oven. 15 or 20 minutes. At 350.